Hello, beautiful people. Today is 13th of July. My name is Sahil and welcome to Newspaper Analysis. Friends, today we'll see a quote from Wes Fessler, who's an American sportsman. He says that good men are bound by conscience and liberated by accountability. Now, usually, the accountability is seen as a form of foundation where a person is bound to justify the actions that he has taken into the course of due justice. But it is a myth. Rather, accountability is a liberating factor as it helps a person to justify himself in his own conscience. So, friends, the accountability looks a burden to only those who are not clear into own their own conscience, their own internal voice. Guys, this could be an excellent quote which can be utilized into the GS paper number 4 when you are writing answers onto the accountability of the government servants as well as institutions. Moreover, particularly into the governance related case studies also, you can very conveniently use it. So guys, that's it. And as yesterday was the Sunday, there was no mains answer, so we will not be taking the mains framework today. So let's take up the newspaper analysis. Friends, first let's take the overview of the entire newspaper. Now guys, here we can see that the mobilization in LAC was planned. So in that particular direction, we will see that what China is looking forward for. Then guys, moving ahead, here we can see the direct seeding method has been mentioned. So we will see that how it can be advantageous over the traditional methods. Then guys, into the city section and regional section, there is no important news, only the regional news, COVID news, etc. has been mentioned. However, here we can see that a certain flood resistant paddy has been mentioned. So we'll see how we can use it into the questions. Then guys, the Mizoram quake zone has been mentioned. So with respect to GS paper number 1 geographical events, we will see certain important thing here. Then moving forward, again guys, only the regional news has been there, not important for our exam. Then we reach to the editorial section. Now, first of all, this particular editorial talks about the European Union and China equations and how the relation might look good, but there are deeper fault lines. We'll see all these things here. Then, guys, the shore power. This is about the solar power plant which has been inaugurated in Riva, Madhya Pradesh. So it has been mentioned that what is its capabilities and all these kind of things. However, very excellently, already we had taken this entire issue. Then, guys, here we will see the critical appraisal of the smart city project. Then here, the Turkey's decision to convert the museum into the mosque has been discussed. Rather, now guys, it has a lot of internal politics, which is not important for our exam. Moreover, we had already seen this conversion into the previous newspaper discussions. Then moving forward. So guys, on Monday, there is a journalistic article which is not important for our UPSC exam. So you can ignore it. Now, nurturing citizens into the social studies. Friends, in past few days, repeatedly we had taken a topic where the CBSE has reduced the course by 30%. So we had seen that how by biology it will be making an impact, how by physics it is making an impact. Today it is talking about the social studies, not required to do for every subject. Moreover, a lot of generalistic things have been mentioned, not much substance here. Then guys, again, the film journalism, not important for the exam. Then moving forward, guys, here we can see that the virtual meetings have been mentioned. So we will see what actually has developed. Then moving forward, guys, the SCST judgment has came or by the Supreme Court. So we'll see what has happened. Then the education plus nothing important articles have been given here. So guys, this goes on for 3 pages, nothing important. On to the world page, finally Donald Trump is wearing the mask, not important. Here we can see a new equation that is brewing up. So we will see the issues. Then not important other things. Then guys, today there is no business page money wise which contains some investment advices, not important for our exam. Then on the sports page also there is nothing important. So that's it. And now let's take up the analysis in detail. Now, friends, starting up, a brief update has been given where it has been said that the Chinese President Xi Jinping had purportedly given the mobilization order which led to the confrontation on LAC between India and China. Now, guys, the Chinese strategy into the past few years has been very classic. Now let's consider this red one as LAC and the blue one as the Chinese perception of what should be the LAC. So guys, in this between region, it is actually the disputed territory. So what happens? The China makes a confrontational move, comes 2 kilometers inside, and then onto the part of a compromise drags 1 kilometer behind. So at the end of the day, China is actually moving towards their own perception, and this particular thing is happening. Take the example of the Fingers region onto the north of Pangongso Lake. So, guys, earlier India was holding the position up to finger number 4 and was patrolling up to finger number 8. So, actually, the Indian territory was up to finger number 8. But what happened? China entered at finger number 4. Then the status quo was to be maintained, and the commander level talks occurred, and China agreed to go back. Where? Up to the finger number 5. So actually China had gained this much territory, and hence China is moving towards their own perception of LAC. Now similar thing is happening into the Galwan also, where China says that the entire Galwan valley belongs to China. Now China's move come from the training mobilization order which was sanctioned by the Xi Jinping, and because of this training mobilization order, Chinese troops started their annual training exercise near the boundary, and this thing not only happened towards the Indian side, rather the troops were stationed onto the other frontiers also. Now at the same time the strike was made at the different pockets, which shows the planned coordination between all the troops. Further, as a part of new training mobilization order of China, China is assessing the real life combat position of the Chinese PLA, and it has been successfully assessed onto the LAC confrontation. And so there could also be the possibility into the future that such kind of skirmishes happen, because the TMO will be into the force till 2021. And in response, India is also stationing the additional division along the LAC sector, so that the befitting confrontation can be given if it happens again into the future. So guys, that's all the development which is coming here onto this sector. So that's it. Now we'll move to next. Now friends, here we can see that the net grid will now get the data from the police stations. Now guys, before going into the news, let's go into the background. See, in 2008, into the aftermath of Mumbai terror attacks, a lot of decisions and actions were taken by the government. For example, the National Investigation Agency was made. Then there was the proposal to make the National Counter Terrorism Center, so that they can act on to the terrorism related things. And at the same time there was also a need felt that we don't have the centralized database by which the activities beforehand can be nabbed. So there the proposal came about the nat grid, where the information from 21 sources will be collected. Now guys, these sources will be like the immigration department, the bank, internet service providers, etc. So the idea is that so much information will be available here that the enforcement agencies well in advance can make the pattern with respect to the suspected activities. And this particular information will be available to 10 central agencies such as the RAW, NIA, Intelligence Bureau, CBI, Financial Intelligence Unit, CVDT, etc. So I hope the idea is clear that NetGrid is a platform where the information from 21 sources will be pooled, and that information will be accessible to the 10 agencies. So originally the plan to make the NetGrid came in 2009, but for nearly 10 years the plan was defunct, and now it has been revived again, and it has been said that by 31st December 2020 the entire NetGrid will go live. And now, in this direction, the NetGrid has signed an MOU with the National Crime Record Bureau that the NetGrid will get access to the CCTNS network. Now, briefly, I'll tell you about CCTNS. So, guys, it is a system where 14,000 police stations of India are integrated with each other. All the FIRs, they are needed to be uploaded onto the CCTNS. So it is a kind of a centralized platform for the policing agencies. Now, CCTNS was conceived as a part of National E-Governance Plan under which the government of India is planning to take the governance through electronic medium. And CCTNS is one mission mode project under NEGP. And guys, this CCTNS is operationalized by the NCRB. Now coming back to our news. So a NetGrid and NCRB has an MOU that NetGrid will access the FIR information from the CCTNS so that it can be made available onto the platform, so that it can be accessed into the time of the need. So that's all what has happened. Now guys, just certain clarifications. First of all, NetGrid will be accessible only to the central agencies, and the state police cannot access the NetGrid. Keep in your mind. Now, we had discussed all this thing. A criticism develops onto the sideline. See, NetGrid is a central level agency, and the police comes under the state subject. So as NetGrid has an authority to access the police data, so there could be a consequence that it is a breach of federalism where center is getting the access of the state's police data. But guys, in the wake of it preserving the internal security, such steps can be taken, and this could be the justification. However, criticism still prevails. So guys, this is all about this particular issue, and now we'll move to next. Now, friends, here we will see the direct seeding method, which is helping the farmers to grow paddy into the Punjab region. Now, friends, into the aftermath of lockdown, there was the severe labor shortage into the big farms, and the time to sow the paddy was round the corner. So, here the direct seeding method was utilized, which had helped the farmers by leaps and bounds, and the farmer will be continuing it even after the crisis. So traditionally, the transplantation method is used for the paddy hay where the saplings are prepared and these saplings are sown into the field. But there is a problem. First of all, guys, the saplings are prepared at somewhere else, and manually each and every sapling is planted into the field, which takes too much of labor and time and ultimately results into the higher agricultural cost. So avoiding this particular method, now the direct seeding method is being utilized where directly the seeds are sown into the field, which requires much less labor as well as time. Moreover, not only it is efficient from the labor point of view, but it also has a certain other advantages. Number one, the yield per hectare is much more than the traditional plantation method. Secondly, into the direct seeding method, the soil remains soft and porous, due to which the groundwater retention increases, seepage increases, and the deteriorating condition of the groundwater can also be solved. And now the third and most important benefit. Now guys, into the traditional method, it after the harvest, the crop leaves a huge stubble which needs to be uprooted or to be burnt. But as into the Punjab and Haryana, the window between the paddy and next crop, that is wheat, is very much short. So farmers prefer to burn that stubble, which causes the problem of smog into the entire North India. Now, into the direct seeding method, much of residue is not generated. Moreover, the residue is not removed, rather, it is integrated into the farm only. So, the problem of stubble is also solved here, and here also the labor will be saved. And fourthly, there is one more advantage that the paddy matures 15 to 20 days earlier, and thus the window between harvesting the paddy and sowing the wheat also enhances, which gives much more time to the farmer for the better farm management. So all these are the major benefits of the direct seeding method. But guys, still the adoption is impressive but can be made much more faster if the tendency of resistance to change can be removed, and in this direction the sensitization by government needs to be carried. Moreover, friends, as we are talking about direct seeding method, into the exam if a question comes, you can also mention about the sagun rice technique which has been perfected into the Maharashtra on to the direct seeding method. And the direct seeding method utilized into the Punjab is inspired from the sagun rice technique of Maharashtra. So guys, all these are into this particular direction, and now we'll move to next. Now guys, just here quickly we will see a reference which could be very much useful in our exam. You know that Assam had faced the very bad flood this year, and it is not peculiar to this year, rather every year such kind of occurrences happen into the northeast and various other parts. So here there could be a solution, that is adoption of the flood resistant paddy which can survive into the prolonged flooded fields. And even certain farmers in Assam has used the flood resistant paddy and had found that the crops have survived. So here the name of two flood resistant paddy has been mentioned, that is the Ranjit sub 1 and the Swarn sub 1, and particularly the Swarn sub 1 is being adopted by large number of farmers, which has been prepared by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. So guys, just as a reference we can give the example of the flood resistant paddy which farmers should adopt into the region which are susceptible to the flood. And even as the climate change will be coming, there will be the frequent disturbances into the climatic patterns, including the frequent floodings. So there this could be utilized. So that's it. Now we'll move to next. Now, in this article, it has been mentioned that what could be the reason for the recent earthquake or the tremors into the Mizoram. And talking about the tremors, there have been more than 8 earthquakes into the 20 days in Mizoram. Now, the epicenter of most of these earthquakes is the Champhai of Mizoram, which also run parallelly to the boundary between India and Myanmar. And the reason for these earthquakes is because that this entire region is caught between the two faults. One is onto the north, and that fault is the Chura Chandpur Mao fault, and one fault at the south, that is the Mat fault. So there is increased activity around these faults, and the effect is felt into the Mizoram, particularly the Champhai. Now, guys, what are the faults? So, faults are nothing but they are the discontinuities into the crust of the earth due to the intense motion of the crustal rocks. So guys, many a times these faults are the points along which the tremors or the earthquakes are experienced, and here there are the two faults, and please remember their name, that the Chura Chandpur is towards the north and the Mat fault is towards the south. So guys, just keep them into your mind. If a question into the geography comes, we can mention their name and the phenomena of a fault can be explained. So this is much more than enough for your GS exam. Moreover, into the prelims also, please remember their location. However, you tend to go deeper only if you have the geography optional. So that's it. Now we'll move to next. Now, guys, we are into the editorial section, and the first editorial talks about the relation between the European Union and China. Now, the relation between both of them operates at two levels. At one level, it looks that the synergies and cooperation are huge between China and Europe because, first of all, both of them are the economic powerhouses, and according to the International Cooperation Program at World Bank, both China and Europe cumulatively accounts for 35% of the global GDP. Moreover, guys, when we talk about Germany, which happens to be the economic powerhouse of the Europe, then its industrial growth between 1995 to 2012 has been possible due to the supply chains of the China. It is now more reliant on China than onto the USA for the critical supplies. And just recently, the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs also proclaimed that China is without doubt a key global player, and the Europe will never be taking sides between the US and China. So it shows that the relation are very profound and very mutualistic, and thus it shows that into the post pandemic world the relation between the China and Europe will be unchanged. But guys, as I told you, the relation operates at two level, so this is just the superficial assessment. Rather, if we make the deeper analysis, then guys, the reality is that Europe has started to become apprehensive of China, which can be noted free from few examples. Number one, In 2019, Strategic Outlook report was released by the European Union Commission, where China has been described as the economic competitor as well as a systemic rival. And guys, this observation has been made because of certain impending issues which are going on. Number one is the China's 16 plus 1 or 17 plus 1 format, under which China is engaging with the Europe. Now, guys, just for a reference, see, 16 plus 1 is a strategic and economic dialogue between the China and CEEC, that is the Central and Eastern European countries. So, on the paper, it states that the aim of the dialogue is to bring the prosperity into the Central and Eastern Europe. But, guys, the reality is that through this particular forum, China is pushing the Belt and Road Initiative. It is taking the tacit approval of the European economies here. And making of this 16 plus 1 is not appreciated by European Union because it believes that China is further creating the sub entities into Europe. China is dividing the Europe. By the way, guys, the 16 plus 1 has been elevated as 17 plus 1 recently after the Greece joined in. Please keep it into your mind. So officially now it is 17 plus 1. After that, the third reason is the China's aggressionist policies. For example, China moved the People's Liberation Army into the Baltic Sea recently as a part of the naval exercise with the Russia, but this particular thing has not been appreciated by the European countries. Moreover, the stance of China into the South China Sea as well as into the Indian Ocean has also not been appreciated by the European countries. And now, the fourth point is a very important one. Recently, China had made the heavy investment into the high tech companies of Germany, such as the KUKA, and has acquired them, which raises the concern that what are the Chinese plan with respect to this acquisition. Moreover, China has not only acquired the corporates, rather it is making the strategic investment into the European ports, such as the Piraeus port into the Greece. So it is being envisaged that China is also aiming to contain the Europe as it has done with the India. And after that, we have the new issues such as China's action into the Hong Kong, China's action into the line of actual control, as well as new actions into the South China Sea, which all have been condemned by the Europe, particularly the Hong Kong episode. And irritated by all this thing, finally, the Europe has made an official statement into the aftermath of COVID-19, where it has been said that China's actions are aggressive and China has been irresponsible into the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, guys, this particular statement here reflects that the relations are about to change. And this change is also different with respect to the orientation. See, guys, earlier the threats from China were mainly economic, such as a threat to the IPR regime, then access of market economy status to the China, which makes China as an economic hegemon. Then the third is the over reliance in China onto the industrial subsidies, which makes the manufacturing really cheap and renders the European manufacturing uncompetitive. But into the wake of present times, the threat is not only economic but it has turned into the strategic one due to China's shifting in gears, where China has officially abandoned the philosophy of peaceful rise and going towards the aggressive confrontation. We can see them well into the Hong Kong, into the LAC, into the South China Sea. And hence, into the post pandemic world, there could be a scenario that, onto the lines of USA, the Europe will also follow decoupling of China or will join the against China camp. And here there is an opportunity for India, as India can enter to fill the vacuum which is being created against the China, and can show the world that how India can act as a provider of regional peace and can how bring the prosperity for the entire Indo Pacific. Moreover, guys, there is also great potential in India that it can provide the technology oriented solutions to meet the real world problems such as climate change, crisis of food, hunger, solutions for COVID-19, etc. And this is the perfect time that India can enhance the bilateral as well as multilateral relation and can push forward the broad based trade and investment agreement so that the relations can be further enhanced. Moreover, by this, India can also collaborate on high technology endeavors such as 5G, artificial intelligence, etc. So, guys, these are the opportunities for India and challenges for China. So, that's it. Now, we'll move to next. Now, this article makes an evaluation of the smart city project on parameters such as health and economy. Now, guys, government in 2015 started the smart city project under which 100 cities were to be identified to be converted into the smart city through the Smart City Challenge competition. And as of now, that is 2020, the majority of smart city project has been ignored and nothing substantial has been achieved. Moreover, as COVID 19 manifested itself, two crises became very much prominent, that is, the health crisis and economic crisis. And in mitigating both of the crises, again, a smart city project has been failed and had not delivered anything substantial. Now, guys, if a practical analysis of smart city is made, then 100 cities were selected, and in these 100 cities, more than 5100 projects were identified, but till now only 1683 projects have been completed as per the data by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And further, if we talk about the health projects into the smart city, then out of a 5100 project, only 69 projects were taken for the health sector. And in terms of budget, only 1% of the total cost were allocated for the health infrastructure. Now, guys, it could be argued that smart city was more towards the technology orientation, but that is not true, because the manifesto of smart city project says that it aims to make the life of citizen better. It aims to bring the qualitative enhancement into the citizen's life, and how without the health the qualitative enhancement can be achieved. Moreover, guys, according to the 12th schedule of the Indian Constitution, which was introduced by the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, there were 18 functional subjects which were devolved to the municipalities, and out of these 18, the health is the one of the subject, so government cannot simply ignore it. Moreover, guys, it has also been seen that in urban models there are two type of case studies. One where the decentralized approach has been adopted, for example Kerala, and it has successfully contained the pandemic. Others are where high centralization has been carried, and here it has been seen that they have not been successfully able to avoid the pandemic's crisis. So the tendency of centralization should be avoided, and the ground level workers such as ASHA workers and front health workforce should be given much important responsibilities along with the financial incentives. But as of now, if we talk about the ground situation, simply they have not been given empowerment, and there are large number of vacancies particularly for the ASHAs. And guys, if you remember, we have talked about two crises of COVID, the health and the economy. So this is on to the health front. On to the economic front also, interventions are needed to be taken. For example, government can resort to the programs such as the National Urban Livelihood Mission. Moreover, guys, onto the lines of MG Narega, the Urban Guarantee Employment Program should also be started, which will give the much needed money to the urban poor. And in such direction, the Kerala government is running such scheme since 2010, and now states such as Odisha, Himachal Pradesh, and Jharkhand have also started such type of initiatives. So, guys, these are some comprehensive, holistic suggestions with respect to the development. So that's it. Now we'll move to next. Now, in this particular news, the issue of a virtual meeting has been mentioned, as the opposition parties are asking the government that virtual meetings, particularly of the parliamentary standing committees, should be convened so that the proper physical distancing norms can be abided. However, government has said that the virtual meetings are not possible as they might violate the secrecy norms. So, this particular matter came in front of the General Purpose Committee, which is headed by the Rajya Sabha chairman, and there are other members such as the deputy chairman, chairman of all committees that are headed by Rajya Sabha members, the leader of political parties with five or more members in the Rajya Sabha. After that, guys, what actually exchanges were made here, they are not important for our exam, but certain important things have been given. First of all, guys, if we talk about the provision of virtual meetings, then right now there are no provisions into the rules of procedure for holding the virtual sitting into the parliamentary committees, and therefore there is a need that the rules of procedures should be amended so that the virtual meetings could be carried, but the changing is only possible when the parliament meets. So the matter is kind of struck. Moreover, guys, there is the British Parliament right now, which is just one parliament around the world where the regular meetings via the video conferencing are being held. So India should learn from the example of the British Parliament. So that's it, and now we'll move to next. Now, guys, here we can see a major development where the Supreme Court has ruled that the disabled are also entitled to receive the same benefits as of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe quota. Now, guys, in nearly all the countries, the affirmative action or the reservation happens to be a major criteria to give the social justice to people. In India, we give comprehensive reservation and other benefits to people such as OBCs, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. Now, for the disabled, also there are certain reservations and affirmative actions, but they are not on par or at the for the SCs and STs. For SCs, 15% reservation is given, whereas for STs, 7.5% reservation is to be given. Now, guys, earlier the Delhi High Court has ruled that the disabled people are also socially backward due to the stigma and other kind of discriminations that are adopted against them, so therefore they are also vulnerable and they are also eligible for the benefits of the SCST quota. And then the appeal was made on this matter into the Supreme Court also, and now the Supreme Court has upheld the decision of the Delhi High Court. So guys, this could be a very important point. You can utilize it into your GS paper number 2 social justice related answers. However, we don't need to go into the technicalities of the case. So that's it. Now we'll move to next. Now, friends, here we can see a dramatic event where the China and Iran are closing to each other, and in this particular direction, the China has signed the economic and security partnership with the Iran. Now, guys, this particular thing is having two dimensions. One is the strategic, and other is the provocative. Now, first of all, onto the strategic angle, guys, China has two consideration. Number one, China needs to secure the energy security for itself. Secondly, China wants the unfettered market access. And if we see the example of Iran, then after the coming of the Donald Trump regime, the Iran has been suffocated by the USA, and therefore there is a large untapped market where Iran can supply the energy and can import the cheap manufactured goods from the China. Moreover, the Iran could also be a destination for Chinese investment into the port, railways, and various other projects. And as Iran is looking towards the deteriorating conditions into the region, Iran also wants to arm itself militarily, and here also China sees a potential market. So, guys, much strategic angle is there, and equally, Iran is also hungry for having such kind of partner on which it can rely, because the USA had very conveniently sidelined all the country to trade with the Iran by the way of threatening countries through dire secondary sanctions. And now the second is the provocative. So, guys, at all the forums and as well as all the platforms, USA is condemning the China, and outright confrontation has begun between the US as well as China. And China, as a part of showing to the world its superiority, has deliberately also taken such a step to provoke USA into the outright confrontation. By this, two things will happen. Number one, either USA will be successfully be able to threaten the China, then the China will use this as an opportunity to show the bullying behavior of the USA, the unilateralist approach of the USA. Or second is that USA will not be taking any action against the China. So by this particular thing, China will prove that it is now coming onto the superpower stage. So in both the ways, the China will be having much needed leverage here. So guys, all these are the analysis and the kind of points which will be coming into this relationship. So please keep in mind. That's it. And now guys, we'll be moving to the question and answer section. Guys, please pause the video and try to answer the questions. So question number 1 is with respect to the AFSPA. So please consider the statement and identify the correct code. Now the question number 2 is with respect to the forest fires. So please consider the statement and identify the correct code. Question number 3 is with respect to the Agrara grants. So please consider the right statement. Question number 4 is with respect to the Aravipura movement. Guys, read the statement and identify the correct code. Now the mains question for today. So guys, the mains question, it says that Indian cities need urgent reform in order to unlock their economic potential and transform quality of life. Make an assessment of recent initiatives of government in this regard. So guys, it is from GS paper number 3 and it is a 10 marker question. So please write the question and keep in mind all the things that we are discussing over the days. And tomorrow we will see the framework for this answer. So that's it. I hope you are liking our initiative. Thank you so much.